Hello, everybody. How you doing? This is KIN234, and this presentation is specific to the positive coaching environment. If you've ever been in any kind of organized sports, or perhaps you've been in like a mentor-mentee type of relationship, you had the opportunity to be coached and mentored by somebody. And many times, if you're in a youth coach environment, you will come across the person who is not into the positive coaching environment. They're very much the opposite of that negative reinforcement, telling people how they're wrong, talking about how they should be doing things differently, and delivering messages that while they are trying to critique and offer suggestions, come off as incredibly negative. Perhaps through this presentation, we'll be able to point out some of the more positive sides of coaching. And, you know, I don't care if you're a trainer, a therapist, or a strength and conditioning coach. When you look at the positive coaching environment, it is created and cultivated by the person leading the programming. So I'm going to use coach throughout this presentation pretty much exclusively, but realize it also takes into account the trainer or the therapist. You're trying to create this positive environment, almost like a falling forward environment, because your people are going to have failure. They're going to have where they reach a particular point where they can't have task mastery, but you have to be able to deliver a critique in a positive and professional manner. And it includes both verbal and nonverbal cues. And we saw that when we were in the fitness lab. We saw how some of the cues I gave when we were talking about different positioning on different exercises, and also how like I got my hands on some people and I was able to kind of mold their body into the right position. You're delivering nonverbal cueing that is both negative as well as positive. And you're using that nonverbal cueing in a way to deliver a message to that person. And believe me, much like any other relationship in your life, it's as much about the message as the delivery. And it's how you deliver that message. So you can still deliver a critique or some negative reinforcement, but in a way that's very positive. So verbal, if I can get down to it, it should be both positive and negative. You should have the ability to be able to deliver coaching points, critique points that are, well, by their design, telling somebody how not to do something, and yet you can bundle it up as a positive message. And that good programming is a key part of this, right? And I've talked about in other presentations. You want to set your people up for successes, however small. And when you talk about a program and working out, you look at your clients, and here's your client. Your client did 3 sets of 15 on bench press last week, and then you're going to have them come in today and try to do a full-on 1 rep test out max on bench press. You're setting them up for failure. You're not putting them in the best possible situation to be successful. And you have to be aware of that when you do your programming and planning for your people. And it's the same thing if you're talking about a strength and conditioning coach or a therapist. You want to have these little successes that you can kind of build on over time. And I use a lot of whole part whole methodology where I might teach on running technique or power cleans. I'll teach part A, part B, part C, part D, and those are all subparts of a particular movement pattern. But when they get to the actual movement pattern itself, whether it's sprinting or doing a power clean, whatever that very dynamic movement pattern is, their body has learned through little steps and successes along the way how to naturally fall into a very dynamic movement pattern and be successful at it and have some degrees of success right from the start. It's because their bodies have learned how to have little wins, if you will, over the course of several weeks of teaching the subcomponents of a movement pattern. And people will fail. They're going to fail on a skill. And I have a whole laundry list of exercises that are deceptively challenging, but unbelievably frustrating that I have my clients do. And I don't do that because I'm malicious. It's because many of these skills, they center around balance, coordination, stability, things that are not normally worked on by a client on their own. They don't do any kind of single leg BOSU exercises on chest Monday, for God's sakes. That's just not their thing. But it requires the person to learn a new skill set, and failure will be part of that. And that doesn't mean the person is a failure. It means you have to be able to coach and cue that person, perhaps to regress them into a simpler exercise where they can have better task mastery on a component of it, and then they can come back and be successful in the exercise. So view it as stepping stones, right? Little itty bitty parts as a part of a much bigger picture that allow your people to have small wins along the way. Huge. It really is. And it helps in the relationship building component as well. So for coaching and cueing, this seems pretty simple, but it's so often missed. If you have somebody who's brand new to working out, you're going to have to introduce the exercise. You got to describe it to them. And then you're also going to have to demonstrate it. Get down on that bench and demonstrate a dumbbell bench press. You're going to have to do it. And point out just a couple key points, maybe three, perhaps four. Anything beyond that goes right over their head, and they just won't be able to retain it. And then have the client perform the exercise in I always say zero or low load environment where there isn't the overwhelming weight there that's causing exhaustion in a muscle. They're just learning a movement pattern. We'll tax that muscle. Don't you worry as we add resistance have to go through the workout. But for that first set, you use that zero or low load environment to be able to coach and cue and put them in an environment to be successful. And part of that, if I can just kind of throw a sidebar in here, you're trying to teach the safety components first to put them in a safe environment, and then you are working on technique components that help with performance. And you'll see that reflected if you ever take the United States Weightlifting Federation certification course, or even the CSCS through the National Strength and Conditioning Association. The key is you focus on technique pointers that provide a safer environment. That is your first stepping stone. Then it becomes technique and pointers that allow you to increase performance. Always safety first. And that might sound like a great question somewhere down the road. Uh, with feedback, you can sandwich it: two positive, one negative, two positive. You can do two positive, two negative. But the important thing is if you ever have a cueing or coaching point that is inherently negative and provides a corrective type of communication. Do not this, do this, change this, do that. You want to sandwich that with one or perhaps two coaching points that are positive. You always want that balance in there. It's never all negative coming out of your mouth, ever. And I use this with clients where I'll describe you're doing this exercise, you should be feeling it in these muscles. And it's a way for people to kind of start to connect with what muscle should actually be doing the work. And it does have its pitfalls because you'll get somebody who'll sit in a leg extension and are doing their set, and you tell them you should be feeling this in the front of the thigh, vastus lateralis, um, and you'll have them say, "Well, gosh, I'm feeling it in my shoulders." That's because they're hanging onto the handles for dear life, and they're really just holding on to their own body weight, and they don't have enough weight on the weight stack to get the training effect in the muscles on the quads. So you're going to have to work through that with your clients, but realize this is a pretty solid coaching tool as well to get people to understand what the heck they should be working. We talk about persona and brand all the time, right? You can be the therapist, you can be the drill sergeant, you can be very hands off, you can be engaged in the session. I'm the kind of person that's engaged in the session, but when I'm training groups or like I'm training teams of people, I'm definitely able to bark out commands and cues and be able to bark things out to a group and hold the attention of that group. Of these, I would definitely have you guys focus on being engaged in the session, but realize some people will gravitate towards that drill sergeant because they need that kind of discipline in their lives because they don't have it. And they'll want that type of persona. So as you go through this course, you'll start to develop who you are and who you want to be as a trainer. And it's key to understand where you are, right? If you're in a facility where it's a very positive environment and people are very positive and they're motivating other people, you're doing great, John. Hey, Jennifer, I saw you lifting the other day. How much did you squat? Oh my God, it's amazing. That's a completely different environment than going into a place where it's like just this negative black thundercloud hanging over the facility all the time. And that can even happen when you have a change in management. I was in a facility one time. It was a wonderful place to work, and then we got new managers, and just everybody quit because of the boss. And that's a fundamental business term where people go to work for a company and quit a boss, but it happens. So you have to be able to understand the clientele, and you also have to understand the facility. And by that, a really fine example is if you're in a Division I strength and conditioning facility for football, that's going to be a totally different animal than like Illinois Bone and Joint or one of the other rehab facilities that are out there. It's just different. The environment's different. How you interact with people are different. How many people are in a facility is different as well, and what they're trying to accomplish is vastly different. And even with this, you can walk across the hallway from the facility in a D1 football program and walk across to their athletic training room, and it'll be a different environment, right? So kind of understand the context of where you are, and then also know where your client is in the process. If they are brand new to working out, if they are scared to be there, you may have to be more of that supportive type person and less of a drill sergeant. there are already some people who are already be freaked out just by going in the facility. I talk about this all the time. And they made the commitment to go ahead, even though they're a little bit freaked out, even though everybody knows what they're doing in the facility except for them, and even though they're going to get beat up in the process of buying a membership, they're still there. And so you got to embrace that and understand that, because those people said, dang it, today is my day. And you got to respect that as a trainer, no doubt. And I can't stress this with a positive environment, right? It has to be appropriate when you talk program design. So you look at the group up top, and I always talk about like a pie chart of wellness and a pie chart of fitness. These folks up top, because of their demographic, if you were to slice up their pie chart of fitness, like part of it's going to be balance and coordination with some strength training and some flexibility. This guy down here who's jacked is going to be a lot of strength training with some cardio, probably not worried too much about balance and coordination, right? So you have to be able to understand this in the context of what is or will be the exercises I will use, what will be the loading parameters, how many reps, how many sets, how much weight, and what will be like the overall volume. And in essence, what you're saying is what will be the overall amount of stress I'll be placing on each one of these human organisms or human bodies to be able to get the training response I want. And what is their end goal? Well, I don't want to slip and fall on the ice when it's snowing outside in February in Chicago. Okay, that's different than this guy who's like, I want to be able to do this, I want to squat that, I want to bench this, and I want to go on stage and flex everybody off the stage. And that's a different animal, right? So you got to understand where your people are coming from and what they're looking to accomplish. Huge, huge part of it. So this, if we look at task progression, there we go. Had to wait for it to load up. From the left here, it'll be a freestanding squat, squat on a BOSU, squat with a shoulder press with a medicine ball. So let me go ahead and let this play. Okay, I always have to wait a couple seconds because when a video is playing, when I'm shooting a video, it kind of drowns out my voice. In the very first one that you saw, it was a freestanding squat, standing, let me pause it, standing on a stable surface. With this one, it's a freestanding squat on an unstable surface. So we've introduced a new implement into the process. We've progressed in terms of balance and instability in one area, though it's the same exercise. And then if we go ahead and go to this one, it's a squat to shoulder press on a BOSU with another implement involved in the process, another piece of small apparatus, if you will. And the movement pattern is changed slightly. So now we raise the medicine ball above our head, which raises the center of gravity, which therefore makes us more unstable. So what we've done is over this process, we've made the exercise actually inherently more unstable over a continuum. And sometimes it's good to view things as a continuum like this, but just realize you look at this and you go basic or general, and it becomes more complex, or general to specific and simple to complex over time. And you kind of look at the ways you can throw in different implements to be able to do this. And the next evolution to this would be a pistol squat, a single leg on here. Then it's a single leg with a medicine ball, etc. So you find ways to create and introduce in those different challenges. So with mastery of skill, you're looking at teaching things incrementally through a whole part whole and progressing from the general to specific and simple to complex mindset. And the mastery of each sub skill is going to allow incremental mastery of the overall skill. So by teaching the different parts, you therefore are able to put all the parts together at the end, the whole part whole concept, and have greater likelihood of task mastery for the whole movement pattern. And it really allows a person to become more familiar with an overall movement pattern that might be inherently very complex. So as you go through this, I want you to think more and more and more on how you can have a positive environment for your client and that relationship that you build with them, though they're accountable to you, though they might salute you for whatever reason when they walk in or call you sir or ma'am or whatever. The point I'm trying to get across is you still are the one that can control that environment and relationship, and that you can control your persona. So I ask you to take time to really put yourself in that position to work on having a positive rep environment. With that, I got about 13 seconds left. I'm going to sign off, guys. Have a great one, and look for the next presentation.